Hi everyone, this is Dr. Jimenez and welcome to part 3 of APA Foundations. This is the final part of our 3-part series of APA Foundations. In part 2, you learned a little bit about APA citation guidelines and you learned how to cite using the signal phrase and parenthetical phrase formats. You learned about that there's different rules and guidelines when it comes to citation depending on the number of authors available. In this section, in part 3, we're going to focus on 3 core sections: the cover page, the running head, and the reference page. So here's an example of your cover page. The cover page is broken up into 3 core sections. On the left, you're going to have what's called the running head, the title of the document. Think of this running head section as nothing more than a shortened version of your overall title, which we'll come back to in a moment. On the right, you're going to have your page number. In APA formatted documents, the page number is always on the top right. And in the center of your document, you're going to have the title, the full title that you have for your paper, your name, and the institution in which you are either writing this paper for or that you belong to. And in this case, for all of our purposes, your institution will always be New Jersey City University. So these are the 3 main sections, and we're going to spend some time on pretty much 2 of them because I think we all know what a page number is. But what you may have some questions about is your running head and how does it work in relation to your title of the document. So think of the running head, as I mentioned earlier, as kind of like a shortened version of your paper's full title. It's really there for the explicit purpose of letting people know that, hey, all the pages that we're looking at are all part of the same document. And the running head simply just serves as that identifier. But there are a couple rules that we have to follow when it comes to using a running head. Specifically, based on the bullet points that you see below, from red to black, the first one noting that the running head itself cannot exceed 50 characters. This is a very important element because, as I mentioned earlier, the running head is a shortened version of your overall title for your paper. So on page 1, you have to actually include the words running head, in addition to some sort of truncated or shortened version of your title. And in this case, all together, all those letters and spaces combined, including punctuation, all combined cannot exceed more than 50 characters. So, for example, if you had a paper that was called Online Learning and Loving It, go with me on this one, folks. We could say running head, online learning, or maybe it's online learning and love, for example. The point is, especially if you have a long title, you're not going to be able to fit all of it there. So long as it's 50 characters or less, you are fine. If not, you're going to have to shorten the title. But the running head, the way that it appears here, this is the kind of formatting guidelines that you should follow, because if you look at this next second and third bullet points, the running head title should always be in capital letters. So after the words running head, your title should all be in caps, all capital letters. Also, it should always be on the left part of the screen, because on the right part of the top part of your screen is going to be your page number. And at the center of your document will be your, in this case, title, your name, and institution. But the one other rule is noted in the 4th bullet point here, is that on the title page, the running head should include the words running head. Simple to this exactly this example as you see here. But when you go to page 2, you will need to remove the words running head so that it appears separately. Because on all subsequent pages, the word running head doesn't appear, just the title of your document, which again will still follow the same rule of it must be 50 characters or less. Now, let me show you what that looks like in Microsoft Word. So let me go to Microsoft Word, and I'm in Microsoft Word right now. I'm just going to go to File, New, and what I'm going to do to make life very simple for all of you is I'm going to pull up, in this case, there's an APA template that you can download in Microsoft Word. I believe that there's one too that you can also download from Google Docs. But when I create a new document, there's an APA style report using the 6th edition. I'm just going to create it. You don't have to do this. You can just create a brand new document and then just edit the headers and footers that are there. But I think this will be a great way to illustrate the point of why your running head will look different from page 1 to page 2. So in this example here, we have the words running head, shortened title up to 50 characters. And then you have your page number, similar to what I explained before. And this is page 1. If I were to go down to page 2, you'll notice that it says shortened title up to 50 characters. But on page 1, it has running head. This is the correct formatting. This is how it should appear. And by the way, this is exactly what you could use. You could just download this template, just like I did, and format it and use it when you create your project to paper, for example. But the point of it is your running head will appear only on page 1, or the words running head will only appear on page 1. And then you get the shortened title up to 50 characters. And on the bottom, starting on page 2, all your subsequent pages will exclude the word running head, but it'll just be the shortened title up to 50 characters. So with that, you can use an existing template, but if you are not using an existing template, and let's say you had a new blank document, let me show you how you would actually do that. It's fairly easy. You can go up to your headers and footers by double-clicking at the very top of your screen, and then what will happen is you'll get this header footer tools tab that will appear here. So one of the first things that you'll notice is that there's a checkbox here called different first page. If you select that, whatever you put in your header on the first page will be different from your second page. So if I wrote up here, okay, my Microsoft Word is not working at the moment. Okay, it looks like it crashed, but it's fine. We can do the same thing here. Notice on this page, it's a different first page. You have running head, you have your title, and that's what this is. This little checkbox is what enables us to have this second different page without the words running head. So when in doubt, you just make sure that you have this feature, different first page, enabled under the header footer document, and you'll be able to make your formatting changes accordingly. With that, again, it's just there for formatting purposes, but it's something that you want to get right. Finally, when it comes to the reference sections, I do want to highlight the fact that there is always a reference section. The reference section appears at the end of your document, and this includes all of these sources of information that you use as part of your research. Whether you're using a textbook, whether you're using a journal article, a web page, a web article, an article from a web database, etc. There's a couple of guidelines and rules. I'm not going to, we could spend hours talking about it, but again, take a look at the reference guidelines, but you'll see that there are some very core standard features and functions, both in the APA 6th edition manual as well as on the Purdue OWL on how to write your references. The key thing to remember here is that when you create your reference page, the center title, which will be the word references, is at the top of the page, and it's not bold. And notice that it's not underlined because you don't do that in APA formatting. It looks just like you see it on the right. It just says references. And then below it, you have double space reference entries where each entry is listed in alphabetical order. Notice that the entries are double spaced. You also will notice that in this case, it's a little different because many of you, when you're used to writing a paragraph, right, you start a new paragraph, you usually indent 5 spaces in Word. and everything else is flushed to the left. What you'll see is that in your reference section, and this only applies to your reference section, your first line is flushed all the way to the left, but the second line and forward, whether it's your third, fourth, fifth, etc., every subsequent line after the first line is indented to the right. This is what we call a hanging indent. And you can pretty much use the guidelines or the formatting tools that we have in the APA template. They'll be able to give you that kind of format. I'll show you in a moment how you can do that in Microsoft Word, how to get a hanging indent. But the key point here is that all the works, regardless of whether they're books, journal articles, newspaper articles, online database, websites, etc., YouTube videos, the format is that you put them all in alphabetical order. And if you use a citation in your paper or in your post, you should have a corresponding reference associated to it at the end. So, having said that, let me switch over to Microsoft Word so I can show you how to do a hanging indent. Okay, so I just opened up a reference page, and I just wanted to give you a sense of how easy it is for you to put in your references in the right format. So on the reference page, you want what's called a hanging indent. Now, if you could see here, I have one entry, I have two entries. They're just flushed all to the left. In APA formatting, that would be incorrect. But if you notice, I have a couple more entries. I have Ukert and Guest and Newsom. We talk about active learning. They actually are using the hanging indent, where the first line is flushed to the left and the subsequent lines are indented. Same thing with UMKC, ICSI, as well as Wenger Trainer. So how do I make it so that these other entries up here use the hanging indent? Well, there's two ways you could do this. There's the easy way, and then there's the easier way. I could go into the paragraph section in Microsoft Word, and I could use what's called a hanging indent, and I press OK, and it'll automatically just move those sections. As you can see, it indents the second and third and subsequent lines to the right. So again, one more time, I just went to the paragraph launcher right here. Well, first of all, I highlighted the text I wanted to format. I clicked on this little launcher button. It's called a launcher. I made sure I went to indentation, special characters. I chose hanging. And when I did, I clicked OK, and voila, it's done. Now, some of you might be saying, okay, well, what's the easier way? Well, you highlight your text, you go to your little ruler on top, and you just count the number of spaces and drag your cursor. You have to be careful though, because you have to make sure that you click on the triangle and not the little block underneath it. So there's a rectangle and there's a triangle. You want to move the triangle. As you can see, it'll actually indent or hang the indent. So you want the bottom triangle, not the top triangle. The bottom triangle will allow you, when you click on it, will allow you to create that hanging indent as well. So you have some options to work with. Having said that, the other thing that I can say at this point is that when it comes to understanding, creating your references, etc., again, this was only meant to be a high-level overview. My recommendation is that you use some of the resources that are available. New Jersey City University's library has some APA formatting guides that you should look at that are on the Blackboard site to the library, or even on the plain old library website. But you also have some additional resources. You have the Purdue OWL as well as apa.org. These links, I'll have them available to you, and you can use them to help you find some guidelines and examples on how to set up your APA formatting. We'll provide more sources as we get closer to your second project, but in the meantime, if you have any questions, please contact me, let me know. And again, thank you all for attending these sessions.